Hello everyone, today we have very special guest Mr. Marcus, an associate professor specialized foresight and strategy at the prestigious Beijing Institute of Technology. With career, Mr. Marcus is also accomplished author of Power and Preference, a book that delves into the profound concept of power and presents his life work boundaries, offering invaluable insight into the realms of foresight and strategy. So, hello, Mr. Marcus, how are you?
Very good. How are you, Alyan? Happy to be here and talk to you and your audience.
Thank you so much, sir. So, first of all, I am very thankful to you to giving me a precious and valuable time for the interview. Thank you so much, sir, for coming.
Uh, okay, so I didn't quite understand what you said just then. Can you say again?
Sure, I say I am very thankful to you to coming in my show and giving me a precious and valuable time for the interview. Thank you so much for coming.
Okay, no. My pleasure. It's good to be here, and
Thank you
hope
so much.
everything's well over there in Pakistan. I'm in
Hmm.
Zhuhai, China, not too far from Hong Kong.
Okay. So before moving on the question, can you please introduce yourself?
Okay, as you've mentioned, my name is Marcus T. Anthony, and I'm living in China. I've been living in the mainland of China for some 8 years in a row now, but I've been living around this area for more than 23 years. I've lived in Taiwan and Hong Kong as well, and other cities like Beijing in the mainland, and uh, also Sichuan province. But I'm originally from Australia, so I grew up in Australia, and when I was 30, I left to go to work in New Zealand for a few years, and during those years, I was mostly a high school teacher. But during that time, I was also doing a lot of work on my own self awareness and healing, um, spiritual understanding, meditation, lots of things like that, and as well as studying, uh, trying to learn my craft also as a teacher and researcher and writer. So eventually, I made my way to Taiwan in 1999, and then into the mainland of China by the year 2002. Yeah, that's it. So that's essentially my very brief background.
Okay, sir.
Can
Thank you
you?
so much. Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. So, my first question in your screen. In your book, Power and Presence, how do you define power and presence?
Okay, well, power and presence are two things that people don't normally associate together. Now, when I use the word power in the context of this book, I'm really encouraging people to look at an inner sense of power, especially the power over their own mind and a sense of understanding or self awareness. Quite often, when people use power, especially politicians or even philosophers, they're talking about power over others or power over the world, the power to get what you want. And I'm not saying those forms of power are wrong or bad, although sometimes they can be damaging. Um, but I believe it's extremely important also to have an internal sense of what I call agency. That means a sense that you have the ability to respond to whatever happens in your life and in your world, and also the ability to respond to things that come out of yourself, because sometimes we feel things and experiencing things that we don't necessarily understand. Uh, we need a certain kind of power or understanding or self awareness to be able to manage those things. So, power really is the ability to be able to uh, perceive what's happening both inside ourselves and outside, and be able to respond to it in a way that makes us uh, have a sense of agency or control over our own perception and understanding. Because it's a bit like William Shakespeare once said, there's nothing good or bad, only thinking makes it so. That's not always entirely true. There are many bad things that happen that I wouldn't necessarily even want to try to make myself feel good about. But we can at least have a sense that when those things are happening, that we have a healthy way to relate to our feelings and our mind. Now, presence is the ability to bring the mind into the present moment and to have a conscious relationship with our feelings and our thoughts and also the outside world. So the key word here is conscious. That means a level of awareness so that we can step outside of our thoughts and feelings so that they don't control us immediately, and then be able to respond in a way that is healthy and that helps us to feel a greater sense of power or agency over our life. So it's really, in a sense, about mental well-being or health, psychological or spiritual well-being.
Okay, thank you so much for this answer. So, how do you incorporate foresight and strategy into your research?
Okay, well, I wear a number of hats. So my hat as a futurist or a foresight practitioner is is related to the work that I do on mindfulness, presence, and power. Um, but you can think of foresight and strategies as tools that people can use um, in communication and also in the academic world or the world of even the world of business. I don't work in business; I work in the university. So, but people in the foresight community, the future studies community, many of them also work with businesses, with governments. Um, in fact, my supervisor at university for my PhD or doctorate, his name is Zhuhai Inayatullah, and his family is from Pakistan, and he's now UNESCO chair in future studies. So he works with governments all around the world. There's quite a few futurists in Pakistan actually as well. Um, Now, when I write research papers, such as in future studies journals, I use methods and tools of future studies to analyze or come to an understanding of the topics that I'm researching. For example, um, I might be researching the environmental conditions in China, which I did in one research journal I wrote about 15 years ago. And there's an analytical tool called causal layered analysis. And I don't want to go into it, but basically, when you analyze a problem, you can look at it from different layers, going from the surface, the things that are normally seen or discussed, down to examining systems, which can be social systems, economic systems, technological systems, which are involved in the problem, but then down to deeper levels that involve the way that people think, their worldview, um, paradigms, which are models of understanding, and uh, and even down to metaphors and stories, because every country and nation and people and culture have their stories about how the world works, and this influences the way that people behave and how uh, in within the different roles they play in society. Like in Pakistan, if you're I don't know, religion is quite important in Islam and to people in Pakistan. So the worldview that's involved in Islam will be very important to the way people behave with each other and in relationship to the world. Um, but if they're relating in terms of maybe the university, if the university is not necessarily, I'm not sure how universities function in Pakistan. I know some of them might have a religious focus, but if you're in the Western countries, they probably most of them wouldn't. So the way you would relate to people may be to do with the story of what a university is, which is to try to seek the truth, to try to come to an understanding of things. Maybe it's also to make the world a better place. And it may be in the Western world, it would be, uh, how can we say, influenced by the idea of the scientific enlightenment, that religion and knowledge are separated, which was what happened in the Western world after the scientific enlightenment 300 or 400 years ago. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, different people have different opinions. There are some good things about that separation, and maybe some things that are not so good also. So that's kind of my long-winded answer about strategy and foresight. Strategy is a plan, right? So so you can work with people or come to an understanding of something, and then have a plan about how you get there. That's an important part of foresight or future studies. It's not just about predicting the future. It's about deciding what you want to do with it, and then having a plan as to how to get there.
Thank you so much for this wonderful answer, sir. So, what is your concept of foresight and strategy, and how we can apply it in our lives?
Well, if you really want to, you could apply some of the tools in foresight in your own personal life. Um, for example, Sohail Inayatullah, who's the futurist I just mentioned, he encourages people like me um, to examine your role in any situation in your life using the same model I just suggested, which is called causal layer analysis. For example, I wrote a paper in a journal called World Futures Review about 2 years ago, and it was entitled, I think, something like uh, Developing China's First Future Studies Courses, Issues and Insights. And actually, I'm not sure whether it was Sahel who advised me to do this or not, because actually the way the journals work is that the person who's advising you is anonymous. You can't tell who it is. So it may have been Sohail or somebody else. But they advised me to use causal layered analysis to think about how I relate to China as a person. Okay, the roles that I play. So at the surface level, which is the first part of causal layered analysis, I think about my role as a teacher. I'm here, I'm employed by the school. They want me to teach the students, including thinking skills, reading and writing skills, because I teach both English courses and kind of social science futures courses. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. But at deeper levels, I see myself as an agent of change. So that's my story to the world. And I believe that in doing the kind of work I'm doing, that it can help the world be a better place. So I'm not just trying to help the students pass the course, but I'm getting them to think deeply. And that reflects my story as well. And also, I'm getting them to reflect on the story of China, or what it is to be Chinese. And that's a personal thing for each of them. And at deeper levels, um, there's a kind of psychological or spiritual component to teaching, where it's about the evolution or development of society and culture and humanity. So I believe that I'm like sowing seeds into the minds of young people at some level. At least I hope to be, and that's also part of the deeper psychological or spiritual component of being a teacher. So that is a part of future studies as I practice it. So it's about thinking deeply about the society and the world we live in, and thinking deeply about our lives, and then trying to make significant changes.
Okay, so thank you so much for this answer. So, how has your work at Beijing Institute of Technology and Zhuhai involved student and industry collaboration?
Well, the student part is pretty straightforward. I teach 3 or 4 classes every semester here. The classes I teach are courses like artificial intelligence and the future of the mind, and also making sense of the digital society, and introduction to future studies. Um, Next semester, I'm going to be teaching other future studies courses, such as leading the future, which is about leadership. So these are all courses which the university permits me to teach, which I'm very grateful for, because I tell you, not all universities will allow you to teach future studies like that. So some people are a bit surprised that China allows me to do that, because it's a little bit political in a way, because you're challenging people's way of thinking and being. But they let me do it, so I'm very grateful for that. I've got some good bosses. There are political things all the time going on in China, but if I taught in a Western university, there's lots of political things as well. It's just that the political things are a little bit different. There's always restrictions or taboos, things that you shouldn't talk about, and so, for example, in China, I don't criticize the government, of course, because that would be stupid, because then I would be fired from my job. But if I was back in Australia, I probably wouldn't criticize certain groups in society. I would get fired. Or if I challenge ideas about the nature of gender, for example, there are certain very clear guidelines about what you should think about gender, the role of men and women. If I disagree with any of those things, even if I did, I wouldn't be very smart to talk about them. And people in Western countries know what I'm talking about, but um, I won't go on with it. So it's not easy to teach anywhere. So my relationship with the students is just as a teacher. Hopefully, sometimes I help them in their personal lives. Now, as for industry, I don't do a lot of direct industry work because my role basically is mostly a teaching role at my university. So I don't work directly uh, with industries. I collaborate with some other universities in other countries like Germany and Russia and so on, and Thailand, but I don't work directly with businesses myself, as in the corporate world.
Wow, that's great. So, how do you teach your student about the importance of foresight and strategy?
Well, each of the courses I teach is 6 months, sorry, not 6 months. Well, it's one semester, which is actually about 4 months long. And all these are standalone courses, so you don't need to do one course to go to the next one. And I always begin with telling them what critical future studies is, which is a way of thinking about the future deeply. And then I introduce them usually to three different uh, methods or tools in future studies, including the one I just mentioned called causal layered analysis, and a couple of other ones which I won't go into. Um, are you still there, Alyan?
Yeah, I can hear you. Continue.
Okay, so I just lost your picture there for a while. So I'm encouraging students to use these methods to think deeply about various issues. And most of the courses I'm teaching now are about the relationship between technology and the human mind, and the same thing I'm writing in my book, Power and Presence. Actually, how do technologies affect the way that people think and feel? How can people use them for good, and sometimes not for good, such as to cheat or manipulate people? And the nature of big tech and technology companies. How does that affect the way that people think and feel about each other? And, so I'm getting them to think about things like artificial intelligence, but also in relationship to helping them think critically about the future and the kind of future that we want or don't want. Okay, and one of the key principles of future studies is that future studies is not just about prediction. It's about thinking deeply about the future and thinking about what you want and what we all want from the future and what's good about it. There's no use, for example, just saying working out what a trend is. Like you can see, for example, more and more people have been using smartphones over the last 10, 20 years, right? Um, but it's no point just saying, well, okay, the number of smartphones has been increasing by 10% every year. Therefore, in 10 years, it will be, whatever it is, more than 10 times more usage than it is today, or whatever the exact mathematical crunching of those numbers are. That's pretty shallow way of thinking about the future. How about thinking about, do we really need smartphones for everybody? Are there other ways for people to communicate and to live their lives? Um, what are some of the pros and cons of using these devices? And do you really want to live your life with a device like that? And if you didn't have it, what kind of life would you live? And would it be better? Would there be some things that are better or worse without these technologies? So I could try to get students to think deeply. Remember, these are mostly students around about 20 years old, so they're old enough to certainly old enough to think smart and think for themselves. Well, I've lost your sound there, Alyan, but I can see the question written on the bottom of the screen. So, okay. So, what qualities and skills do I believe are essential to becoming a successful foresight practitioner? Well, the first thing you need is a strong passion for the discipline of future studies or foresight. And almost everybody that joins this field or discipline has a very strong passion for it. So, people are very passionate and excited usually. But there's a whole range of different kinds of people. It's multidisciplinary. So, for example, my background really, when I was younger, was studying history and English and the arts, as we would call it. Okay, but then I became interested in intelligence theory and human emotional well-being, uh, psychology, and spiritual development as well. And so that's where I come from. But there are other people who are philosophers, mathematicians, um, school teachers, people in technologies, um, business people. All kinds of people get into future studies. So it doesn't really matter what field you're in. You can probably find a space for yourself in the foresight and future studies community. But there are courses or qualifications that you can seek in this area. There are quite a few universities across the world that can prepare you by doing master's degree courses and even certificate degree courses. For example, I went to the University of the Sunshine Coast in Australia, and they have masters and PhD programs. The University of Hawaii at Manoa is another one. There are actually a lot of them. Finland has many such programs. Um, you could probably, I'm sure you could probably find some in Pakistan. I know there's some futurists there. Uh, what I'm just trying to pronounce her name correctly. Puuru Chowdhury, I think her name is. She is working in Pakistan. I think she runs some courses there as well. Um, so you can get qualifications in this area, which will help you learn the different skills and the methods of future studies so that you can then apply them to your own industry or business or interests or just for your own well-being or life. So they're the main things. A passion. I would suggest getting some sort of qualification or learning, and then needing applying them somewhere, either in your own life or your own industry or field.
Thank you so much for this answer. Okay, sir. So, my last question is, do you have any tip for your audience on improving their power and defense presence?
Oh yeah, so the key here really is learning the skill of being present. This means bringing the mind into stillness and being present with what is occurring in your life in the present moment. So, in order for this to happen, you really need to practice some kind of mindfulness practice or meditation practice. And it can be through a religion or a spiritual practice. Um, you can find many of them in almost every spiritual tradition, including Islam. Uh, Christians also have meditative practices. So the key is being able to bring your mind into presence so that when things happen in your life, you have a deeper awareness of why they're happening or how they're happening in the body. For example, if you wake up in the morning and you feel a sense of depression or sadness, if you don't have a sense of mindfulness or deep connection to the body, it's just a feeling running through you, and you may have no sense of ability to really work with that. And one way might be to uh, take up a physical practice such as exercise, which will help moods. But if that feeling is associated with some deep trauma or issue or conditioning within yourself, you'll need some sort of inner practice as well. Most likely, there are other reasons why depression and anxiety and those things can have many causes, by the way. So I'm not suggesting they only have one or two. They can be quite complex. But what I'm saying is that it can be very helpful for you to have a strong sense of connection to yourself. So you really need to understand over time, moving through your life, um, who you really are in relationship to what happens. So when you experience things and you notice how they affect you, you can really begin to get a greater sense of who you are, the things that make you feel unsettled or that really resonate with you, that make you feel impassioned or empowered, and you slowly move your way through your life, not this way, not that way, and eventually you start to get to know yourself. And that's really what empowerment is. It's really a strong sense of knowledge so that you can know yourself. And then when you go out to set goals, to be successful in the world, you're moving your energy into places and spaces that resonate deeply with you in a way that's deeply meaningful for you. Not just because somebody told you should be a doctor or a teacher, because everybody in our family has done that. But having a deeper sense of purpose in your life, and for me, it's also a sense of spiritual guidance, because when I developed these kind of self-awareness skills, which you can find in some of my books, it gave me a much greater sense of who I am at a deeper level than just my current life. So there's a kind of a deeper spiritual thrust or movement or context to life that you can really only find through developing that sense of presence and power. But that power just doesn't come from you. It's something that moves through you. So it's a very spiritual thing. It's not just about you pushing out into the world from the ego or the masculine. It's about the receptive side and letting this consciousness move through you, so that wisdom it becomes a wisdom path, not just a path to get what you want. So that's my sense of what it is.
That's awesome, wonderful, sir. So, thank you so much, sir, again for giving me a precious and valuable time for the interview, and thank you so much again for coming. So, thank you so much, sir. I hope also everybody learned something new with your talk. Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Alyan, and good luck with your hosting of your podcast, I guess is what you call it. I've enjoyed being here. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
your
you so,
intelligent questions.
thank you so much.